outside interests include golf, card and board games, baking, and photography. And of all the roles Steve has taken on in his life, the one he treasures most is being a devoted dad to his two wonderful daughters, Kira and Piper. And to Steve's left, we have a recovering journalist, 3 years into her second career, Vicki Smith, who spent 26 years as a newspaper and Associated Press journalist. And she is the Director of Communications for ITS at WVU. Our CIO decided to liven up the cute farm by hiring a rabble-rouser who actually likes to talk to people. And now, 3 years in, she's helped change our culture. Now, whether they like it or not, everyone in ITS understands the value of communicating early and often about our work. And since July, Vicki has been wearing the second tiara of Interim Executive Director of Business Relationship and Customer Support. That means that she has a lot more people reporting to her, a lot more tasks on her plate, a lot more meetings, and a rock-solid guarantee that she'll never have a boring day at work. She likes to feed people and hold awesome parties on her big deck, so she cooks a lot, and she might even love beer, wine, and her 75-pound lap dog, Teddy, as much as she loves to eat. So I'm going to turn everything over to them and enjoy the presentation.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going to put on my close-up eyes. So, hey, we're here to talk about the Employee Recognition Program that we made for our tech unit at WVU ITS. And we'd like to start off with a little bit of history. Our predecessor organization had a history of failed programs driven by the personality of the CIO at the time. It was very top-down. Some recognition was deserved, and on the ground level, some people thought a lot of it wasn't. The programs took many forms. Some leaders gave out lifesavers, actual lifesavers. Some put names on plaques on walls. There was a chance at quarterly meetings for bosses to recognize people who did good works, but it became more of a cheerleading session for some people, while others were always left out. Teams that felt left out resorted to recognizing each other, so every time we finished a project, everyone got a certificate. And sometimes the team made those up. They printed them, framed them, hung these on walls, kind of like kindergarten participation trophies. There were perceptions of unfairness in the favor of children or teachers' pets. The process and criteria for recognition weren't transparent. This ended up being something that we focused a lot on in our program. What was intended to be an honor became a matter of routine. Some people refer to it as the nomination of the quarter. It had no meaning unless you were among the chosen few. Some people got recognized repeatedly, and others never did. Anyone here have similar experiences with any kind of recognition program?
Anything you want to share? Happy to hear your stories.
Yeah, I didn't expect more than one or two people to actually nod or raise their hand, so this, I'm happy about that and unhappy at the same time. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share? Horror story, good story, anything? Change hands.
Well, we used to do a similar program that you described. I forget what it was named exactly. It had some cheeky name. And it was like they had to give one out, and it ended up then just being like people over and over again, or just wrote, or it was, you know, and then because it had to be given out, it was like, well, what are we going to come up with to give it out? Kick it out.
That's kind of the same stuff that we've run into where monthly staff meetings, we have a session kind of open for kudos or something supposed to be to your employees who've gone above and beyond, but it ultimately devolves into thanks for showing up to work today in a lot of ways. Right. That's not real. You delivered the project on time. Again, you were supposed to deliver the project. And so some of the meaning kind of gets taken out of that. And the other thing that kind of drew me to looking at this session particularly is we're looking at ways to try and get it out of that monthly staff meeting, which is just our team, and what does deserve recognition, making that known broader, higher up, and further out.
Hopefully we'll be able to answer some of those questions. And you brought up an important word that Vicki and I know well, that's had. A lot of these recognition programs, you had to have a winner. You had to have somebody. I think ours is a little different. We'll get into that momentarily. So we've come a long way. Put a lot of work into a solution. We have a proven framework for a successful employee recognition program. We're only on 2 years. It allows for dedicated awards that use that framework as a guide, and we'd like to tell you a little bit more about it. So I've got 2 screens of images to show you, and this is just to give you a feel. This particular slide has pictures from our inaugural quarter in the upper right, all the way through winners who were just the last quarter. And it's really changed the dynamic of award thought in our unit. Now, I put this up for 2 reasons. One is, I know, and I don't know if she's here, is there someone here who worked with Warden E at another university? It's you, there you are!
3 universities.
3! I put that up there for you, just so you'd have a fourth reference. Warden E is our president for the 2nd time. And he came to our last quarter, our 8th quarter. I wanted to show that. The other thing is, in the wide photograph at the top in the middle, there's a lady looking this way in profile, and a guy looking to your left with glasses on. That's Mike Rosicki, and he's kind of the father of the program. He's the one who brought it to Vicki, and they worked on it together in the beginning together. So, what did it take for us to go from a program that employees did not like and had reservations about to get where we are now?
So, as Steve mentioned, Mike came to me. I was brand new in the organization at the time. But I had joined WVU from the private sector, and in particular from a company that had a proven, competitive, serious employee recognition program with a strict submission and review process. It was called the Beat of the Week Award, and winning it was what we called a BFD. You're all acronyms, you know what that one means? Does anybody need the G-rated version? Okay. So it was an award for the best and biggest news scoop in the entire organization, and the Associated Press is a global organization, so that's extremely competitive. Over time, that program evolved to have a second category, Best of the States. So if you were a reporter at the state level competing with somebody who was covering foreign conflict, you still could win. And even though I was a solo correspondent working in a rural outpost of West Virginia, I won both of those awards. So I knew that there were examples of recognition programs that worked even in big, distributed, siloed organizations where some people felt or actually were isolated. So I was immediately, I'm all in. Mike had also come from the private sector. Mike also had been part of a program that was rigorous and strict and worked really well. We believed that we could do this at WVU. Our unit at the time was called the Office of Information Technology, and we had more than 100 people. But shortly after we started this project, several other IT organizations on campus merged with us, and our organization doubled in size. We actually believed that this presented a unique opportunity for us for connection and fellowship. We believed that this program could actually help create a sense of community where one did not exist. So our next step was to get the blessing of the CIO, to whom I directly report. He gave us what he considered his organizational values, and his wish for a program that would eventually become scalable around the university. And then he cut us loose. Mike and I had job one, which was to recruit a committee. We wanted specific things. We wanted a mix of new hires and longer-term employees. We wanted introverts and extroverts. So we have developers and DBAs and InfoSec guys, and we have more public-facing, public-speaking people like the service desk and communications. We wanted people who had diverse experiences and viewpoints, but open minds. That's pretty critical to this. And above all, we wanted people who had enthusiasm for the concept and who believe in the possibility of change. Because if you don't believe you can change a system, you won't. In getting ready for this conference, our committee had a great conversation about what we consider the most important elements, what we think have been our keys to success. And here are kind of the top 5. Autonomy from the senior staff, even though I am part of the senior staff. This program is for employees, by employees, and it is voluntary. volunteer-driven. Our CIO is leaving us January 4th, but our program will continue because it's bigger than any one person or any one regime. Second, diverse representation both in personalities and roles. We talked about those different positions we wanted to have on our committee. Third, and this may be the most important, proper motivation. You always do what's right for the organization and best for the well-being of our peers, knowing that sometimes the good of the many must outweigh the good of the one. And then finally, there is one thing that is very important in our group, and that is equality. And everyone in our committee has a voice, and every voice has equal weight. And in that room, titles don't matter, except for one thing. When it comes to matters of the Oxford comma, it is good to be the administrator. Yes!
However, because we are a community of equals, you didn't think I was going to strip, did you? Those of us from the English side who adore the Oxford comma.
There you go.
We have this debate every single week. Okay, so after we got our committee together, Mike and I convened the initial group, and then I left because I was a member of the senior staff and really didn't want to be involved. It was really up to them to see what was going to happen next. And about, I don't know, an hour or 2 hours later, Mike came by my office and he said, I don't know if this is going to fly.
Yeah, it was hard. We had a lot of opinions. We had a lot of people from across our organization. And even though it looked like we might not meet again, we agreed to meet again the next week. When we came back, everybody was ready to work. It was very exciting. The idea was, let's do it right. Now, one of the first decisions we made, however, was we adopted the Vegas rule. Everybody familiar with the Vegas rule? No.
No?
What's Stacey Vegas? What happens in Vegas? That thing that I just messed up? We adopted that in the community. You know, what we talk about here is between us. You don't have to worry about roles. You don't have to worry about who's high, who's low. It doesn't matter. We're equals. And that was a huge deal for our program. So, in that approach, we all know that democracy can be slow, but it's essential for buy-in. I mean, like Vicki said, these people were volunteers. We were approached, and we said, well, do we want to do it or not? Yes or no? And so we were invested from the beginning, and that created something inclusive. And all of this feeling of being inclusive and having a voice, that all started with the committee, and it shows through in our program. Everyone gets a vote on everything, just like we said, and we will discuss as long as we need to. There was a 3-week period where we talked about t-shirts.
Oh yes, the fabric sample and the color and the design.
Where it was going to go, how it was going to. We really invested a lot of time. And in the background, we had 3 of us who were invested with trying to maintain order and make sure everyone got a voice. So we were kind of silently trying to guide the committee so that everybody got to participate. And Mike Rosicki, the guy I showed you, he set a really good example of trying to make sure everybody got a say. We started with the foundation of the program, which with categories for the awards, and it's hard to see on that, but that's when we were talking about the categories of the awards. We took the initial values given by the CIO, added the committee's input, and came up with a pool of 11 to 13 categories. We whittled it down to 3. And actually that meeting, on the right-hand side, you just see some things that you can barely see on the list. 3 of those are marked. Those ended up being our 3 core categories. And our categories are innovation. And simply, innovation is someone who has a solution. All right? Someone who thinks about something in a different way, is able to bring something to the table that nobody thought of, and get a job done. You know, it's not just the drudgery of what you do, it's what you think of and how you do it. Our second award is role model. And role model, if you don't know, it's someone who's an example to others. It's very simple, okay? But it encompasses a lot. And our last category is outreach. So this is for someone who represents the ideals that can go far beyond what we see in the workplace every day. And these categories form the core of the awards and the program that we created.
right. We wanted our program, unlike the ones we talked about as examples in the beginning, we wanted it to have rules and have meaning. So we needed a charter, and we have one, but it has been a work in progress and will continue to be. It's a living document by design. We are not founders who laid down rules never meant to be broken. We have added processes after taking a vote and then reconsidered and revoted to remove that process a few weeks later after hearing new arguments. In our program, the winners of each quarter become the judges in the subsequent quarter. If an award isn't given, we have a transparent process for filling the vacancy. We considered every scenario we could think of in creating the charter. We still didn't cover them all, but we gave it a good try. Down to addressing the fear of people who are intensely private and might reject the idea of public recognition. You all work in IT, you know the people I'm talking about. So we created an opt-out provision in our charter for that very reason. Happily, it has yet to be used in 2 years. We have yet to have anyone decline to be publicly recognized. For credibility at all levels, we also had to create a limited check and balance system. First, to ensure that the proper people got credit for work and that there were no legal or HR reasons to exclude anyone. This also gave the senior staff the courtesy of advance notice and made them feel involved, even though it's just a little bit. We knew that our rewards didn't have to be monetary, and for us, they actually couldn't be. West Virginia law limits spending on the recognition of a public employee, which we all are as state employees, to just $25 per person per year. That doesn't go very far. There are also additional limitations on things like gift cards. I can't tell you how many hours we spent discussing what the award package would be, and that was a key restriction. We also had a one-time startup budget that the CIO had given us of $3,000. That was it. So we had to be creative. We put a lot of thought into our prizes and tried to come up with something that could convey value. Ultimately, we settled on a package that contains our lovely one-of-a-kind t-shirt designed by Lisa Bridges, who's a graphic designer and web designer on the communications team, an enamel pin with our Rocket Award logo. We have a certificate that we print for every winner at virtually no cost to us. We have virtual recognition on our AwardU website, which you'll see the link to at the end. We encourage you to go look at it. It's pretty cool. We also recognize our winners with little 150-word summaries in the cross-campus recognition program, which is called Climb Higher. That one is not like ours at all. It doesn't have any rules or structure. It's just if you think somebody did a good job, you send in an email, and it gets shared with the entire campus community. Ours, because we know how these people were chosen, they mean something more when they show up in that program. And then finally, we have the winners get temporary possession of our unique Rocket Award trophies. And these are fabulous. That's about their actual size. They're huge. We're making it all sound simple as we stand here, but it really wasn't. There was, to get from the theory of the committee room to the actual ceremonies, we have.
We've got, I mean, these are actually bronze. And we've got these one-of-a-kind trophies. They're kind of like our Stanley Cup. So that takes effort, but we still needed to sell it to our coworkers. So just to reinforce the work that was involved in what we did, here's an example. This is Ashley. She's one of the developers that helped build our web application. We needed a submission method that worked for all employees, and we decided to go the ambitious route of creating one of our own. There were a lot of technical and operational pieces to execute first, but we built a website and submission app using the resources of our committee, so we were very fortunate in that regard. The people who made up our committee were from all the different parts of our unit, and they all had different skills, and they contributed in different, very valuable ways. So we also designed marketing materials and collateral, including posters and signs. After settling on the trophies, we used the connections of the committee members to get a creative arts professor to actually create them. So it's an artist who created those for us, those one-of-a-kind items. We even designed huge wall vinyls. So we have 3 floors in ITS in our building. So there's one of these on each floor. And we we actually put the people's names in vinyl underneath so they're there as they walk by. We also had to clean house. We had to come up with a way to retire the old plaques, and respectfully, and that's a challenge. The employee of the quarter plaques hadn't been updated in how many years? Can you guess? Ooh, that's good. That's 6. But it wasn't 10. But when the plaques came off the wall, some people were upset and curious. Rightfully so. They've been on the wall a long time. So we took each nameplate off of the plaques and created these individual cards. I don't know about that big. They come complete with a little bitty easel, so you can display them however you want. Everyone that I talked to who got one of these was very happy with it. A lot of people I know have them on display in their office. Lisa, our designer at ITS that Vicki brought up, just did so much work on the forward-facing elements of our iconography and our design, putting it all together. We're very fortunate to have her there. And there's just so much more work in this than most people realize.
So these little calling cards here are something that Lisa designed as well. This actually grew out of a committee discussion and a request from the CIO. He said, what do I do if I run into somebody on campus who tells me that one of my people did a great job? Do I have anything to direct them to? So we actually had these calling cards that we gave to all the members of our leadership team so that if somebody said, hey, your person really helped me with that project, we could say, hey, here's a card, would you like to nominate them? So that was one of the many things that we did. So because of the skepticism and hurt feelings and frustration with the past programs, we knew that we had to sell what we created. So we approached this as a genuine marketing campaign with multiple facets. We sent out emails to the staff several times explaining the program and the categories, identifying the committee members. We presented to about 50 people in leadership positions. I should say our organization now has about 230 people, so 50 sounds like a lot, but these were people who were middle managers, upper level managers, and some others. We brought them together first, did a PowerPoint, and had the entire committee on hand to answer questions for the leadership group before we went to the rest of the staff. We even held open houses with rocket-shaped cookies that ended up being horribly decorated by Giant Eagle, but were still delicious. We displayed them in vintage lunch boxes, and again, we had the whole committee there, united to answer questions. After all the build-up and planning, after having a solid start on the charter, we thought we were ready to go. So we didn't actually expect our first quarter to go as well as it did. It was a new program. We had dozens of nominations. Unfortunately, some were just one sentence that basically said, John is a really great guy. But we had a few who really got it. Our first outreach winner was somebody who was a very well-known and outgoing employee. But our first role model winner, who was chosen for quiet but unsurpassed dedication to the job, was so quiet that the vast majority of ITS didn't know who he was when he was recognized. And people were literally going, oh, I've seen him in the hall. They didn't know who he was. Even the judges were surprised when his name was announced. And that's because part of our process is our nominations are judged anonymously. I would be the first to tell you that I was very skeptical that this would actually work. In the committee meetings, I said, I don't believe this is going to work, but it did. The judges actually didn't know who the winners were until that first, and that is a process that has continued today. So that was proof for us that our program was solid because we had successfully focused on the work that a person did and not the personalities. This was not a popularity contest. We knew that we were on the right track. But it wasn't all roses. There were some problems and there were tweaks that needed to be made.
After our first quarter, we discovered a problem. People did not understand the categories. It's a big deal. We had 3 categories. You got to submit and nominate somebody. So we responded with another round of marketing. We used memos, posters, cards for people to take off the wall and keep at their desks. People still didn't understand that this was for the employees by the employees. We keep saying that over and over. For the employees by the employees. And a lot of people seem to expect someone else to make nominations. Somebody else to do it. I'm going to make an educated generalization. correct me if I'm wrong. Many IT people are not wordsmiths. That makes sense? So, to get around that, Vicki offered up confidential services to help nominators with nominations. Keep in mind, with this kind of help, Vicki has no judging power. She has no influence on how the nominations are judged. Okay, we anonymize all that information, the judges get it. I was just thinking about that earlier. So, people said they didn't know if something was worthy of nomination, but we told them, yes, err on the side of nominating, but be specific and give concrete examples. Our data shows that people learned this over the course of our program so far. Without active participation and guidance from the committee, we believe the program would have floundered. We dedicated a lot of time selling the program to people that we created it for. We did have one quarter with only a single entry, the last quarter of 2015, and that raised two problems. First, it wasn't a scenario that we planned for in the charter, so we had to decide how to fix it, and we did. We amended the charter. Second, we wondered if this was the end of the program. What else are you going to think? We decided to let judges review the nomination anyway, and they ultimately decided to not grant an award. That was another validation for the committee. The judges understood that these awards actually mean something. We don't just give them out to give an award. If no entries are worthy, no award is given, period. Fortunately, that quarter has turned out to be the anomaly out of our 8 quarters so far. We've now settled into a pattern where we have fewer nominations, but much better nominations. They are comprehensive, well thought out, they are substantive. The judges are able to make decisions based only on the information in the entry and without asking for more. We have a system that works, but getting up to speed is a process.
So I wanted to share with you this quote because I'm sure all of you have been in a situation where it's very rare to hear anything nice. People are really, really quick to complain about problems or be critical, but this was from our role model winner, not our most recent one who just was chosen, but the one before that. His name is Ardell, and he is an assistant director, and he's a very quiet guy, very thoughtful guy. Doesn't display a lot of emotion or anything, but he sent this email right after he won. And then last week, actually, he stopped in my office and he said he had he was off for a few days and he had been wearing his t-shirt over the weekend. And he stopped in my office last Monday and said, you know, I just want to thank you again for doing this program because I wore this all weekend and I've really been thinking about it and it's a great thing. That is what it's all about, that kind of validation. So since we submitted our paper, which probably answers a lot of questions that you have, but we'd love to hear yours in person, a lot of things have changed. For example, we changed a rule that we had about publishing the nominations of people who didn't win, then changed it back a few weeks later when we dug deeper into both the concerns and the benefits of that process. You hear it at the Oscars, but we feel it's really true in our program. It really is an honor to be nominated. And just as a side note, this is not something we planned, and we don't know whether our next CIO will do it, but one thing that our current CIO does is handwrite a note to every single person who was nominated. And he asked for note cards that had our program logo on it so that he could do that. And they mean so much to people. Some people were terrified the first time they got them because he walked around, he actually showed up at their cube and handed them, and the CIO shows up at your cube, and you're kind of like, but they keep them, they display them in their cubes, and it's just that personal touch that he really believes in this program. We also changed the way we handled the runners-up. We mentioned that people are not wordsmiths, right? One of our assistant directors, after he was a judge, said, it's really a shame. People put so much time and thought into those nominations, and they don't win, and then there's no other chance. The committee discussed it, kind of agreed, and said, okay, we're going to automatically resubmit you for reconsideration the next quarter. If you're chosen as a runner-up, and the judges don't always choose runner-ups, but if you do, they're automatically resubmitted. So they get a second chance to win. Originally, it was like Miss America. The runners-up would fulfill the duties if the winner could not or would not serve. So then we also changed our point We had argued for and against a 1 to 10 rating system for the judges on scoring the nominations. We launched our charter with a scale of 1 to 5, but then we eventually changed that to 1 to 7, again based on suggestion of judges. Our judges have actually become a great source of change after they participate. They always get newfound respect for the program. The thing that we hear over and over again is, I didn't realize how serious this was, or how much work you put into it, or how competitive. Until they judge, they actually don't know how awesome they are either. What we have learned is winners appreciate the award, judges appreciate the program. We also formalized a role that we informally call Judge Wrangler. The committee member who explains the rules, answers questions, and helps kind of balance the judges' discussions. Anytime you have a group of people evaluating something, you're going to have easy graders and hard graders. So this is a person who helps kind of get them to a unanimous decision. We currently have other committee members who are monitoring this process as apprentice wranglers. The idea there is it will help the longevity of the program to have a continuity of people. People who will fill in for our permanent judge wrangler, should he ever leave us, are already familiar with and understand the processes. And we also learned a life lesson. Nothing brings people together or to an award ceremony like bacon. The restaurant next to our building, Table 9, a lovely place if you're ever in Morgantown, has become a vital partner in our celebrations.
This is at the beginning, of course, because at the end. Last one, I got one piece of bacon. One piece. I waited to the end. I had stuff to do. One piece of bacon. It was sad. So, from our first ceremony at a table in the lobby of our building to platters full of bacon and a visit from our president, Brandi, this program has really grown and improved. It's bigger than any of us. It required all of us, including Kathy. It is made to continue without us. Okay? And it helps because we all have the potential to be the best of us, and we want our employees to understand that and feel that. So, in preparing for our presentation, we started thinking about the future. We finalized the AwardU charter, even though it's likely to change again. It's a living document. And we realized it's time for us to start focusing on making the program scalable. That was an original intent, but we recognized that we need to separate the AwardU umbrella structure from our rockit award. They kind of became one document as the process went on. So it got inadvertently lost in merit. But our plan is this spring to begin extracting it so that framework exists on its own as a separate document. We also believe we're ready to start promoting our program. And after the fourth quarter of this coming year, we will likely start talking to the rest of the campus about what to do. Our committee continues to meet for an hour almost every week, going soon to be 3 years. Like I said, we've devoted a lot of time to this, and it's been wonderful because we've had the blessing of our CIO. So, it is by far the most entertaining, but also one of the most important and productive meetings on our calendars. It's our committee, including, again, Kathy Fletcher is here with us today, that makes the program what it is. But overall, everything that we've told you, bacon and everything aside, why we do it is because of this. Now, even if you don't know her, you've got to get why this image just kind of encapsulates, what we set out to accomplish. And that's our presentation. If you would like to know more, please go to our website. You can access most of it. There are things you have to log into to get to. If you'd like us to answer some questions about that, we will. We hope to have the framework ready to let other people use this coming year. Please contact us with any questions.
So one of my biggest questions actually is, like, sitting here, this sounds really phenomenal. It seems like there's a lot of work that you guys have done that we would be able to capitalize on, but at the same time, one of the biggest strengths, it seems like, is that you guys, as an institution, sort of developed the program yourselves internally. So sort of thinking about it in terms of, how can I take this and learn from it without also just saying, here, let's implement this thing that other people came out of? Have you thought about that? Have you reflected on that, especially as we look at branching out to the rest of the college, university?
so for us, it was the process. I mean, we didn't know this is what we were going to create, right? We didn't start out that way. We had conversations with people saying, okay, well, how do you feel about award programs? You start with that big question. Well, what kind of award programs have you had experience with? And then your questions, get narrower and narrower. Why did that work? Why did that not work? Why do you feel good about this one? Why did you not feel good about this one? And we so we didn't know what this program was going to look like, but we knew what we didn't want to create. And so sometimes that's half the battle, right? Knowing what you don't want to do and having bad examples can kind of lay the groundwork for where you're going to go. So, I mean, I think if you were going to create this at another institution, the first thing you'd want to do is see, is there any desire to do so? And do you have enough people, enough critical mass to even form that committee to start those conversations? I think our original committee had 12 to 15 people. It was probably about 12. I think kind of any bigger than 15 people, it's going to get unmanageable. It's kind of like wrangling cats some days anyway. But it's, a small group of thoughtful, caring, committed people. I mean, you don't want people to just engage in, pardon my language, a bitch fest. And there will be sessions where it becomes that. People are just going to want to unload. One of the things that I think is really important to understand is that's part of the process. You got to let that happen. They need that catharsis, right? They need to just let it out, and that's why we have the Vegas rule. In that room, you can say whatever is on your mind, and it stays in that room. And it was amazing how everybody got the negativity out of their system. Then they were ready to do it right. And that was kind of, I think there was like this magical moment where this idea went from becoming bitch fest to challenge. And this group of people were like, yeah, this is stupid and blah, blah, blah. And then they came back and they were like, you know what? We can do this. We can do it right. And that determination is why we keep coming back every week and tweaking what we're doing. So start with a really honest, open, painful assessment of where you are and what your culture is, and then find those people and start the discussion.
And the joy of what we've done is, I mean, we looked at it from the start as something that we wanted to be scalable. We wanted to be able to offer this skeleton of the people that pretty much had its own charter already, the framework charter, AwardU. And like I said, our Rocket Award takes that framework that we built and ended up merging, and it plugs in. So hopefully this coming year, we'll be able to offer it up and say, look, this is everything you need to do process-wise. This is how it works. This is what you need to do. You need these members to make it work. You need judges, you need administrator, you need all these roles. And we've got all that mapped out in the charter that we've got right now. It should be up online at this address. I think she did.
So we can update we can upload our presentation after this, and we'll do that. We'll make sure to add the charter to that. I'm not sure if we actually got the charter changed on the website. It might be an old version, but it should be hypothetically be scalable. As Steve pointed out, one of the things that we lost focus of was that scalability while we were working on it. We have been so committed to and focused on making it work for our organization that we kind of lost the bigger picture. But now that we're like 2 years in and we've had this experience behind us, we're ready to start doing that next piece, which is to make it scalable. We kind of had to focus on job one, which was making it work for WVU.
And we've got the sections for awards.
Right.
So, but the thing is, these are just totally specific to us. Within that framework, that AwardU framework, you'll be able to talk amongst your peers and come up with your own style of award and just slots right in.
Actually, there's a really good point to what you just said. The outreach award might not be obvious and might not make sense for your institutions. At WVU, I mean, we're a flagship land-grant institution, and one of our strategic goals as a university is to help improve the quality of life for West Virginians. So, it's an institutional goal and an ITS goal. So outreach can mean something you do in the course of your job in ITS, but our winners have primarily been recognized for things they do outside of ITS. People who volunteer with the Red Cross and help run disaster response groups, and people who volunteer with the Boy Scouts of America and the National Science Fair. people who do those kinds of things, because we as an organization decided that was one of our values. It might not be yours. You might have different values.
It's a small thing. Tools and culture being much more important, but the review system you use and anonymization, is that all automated through the web process or something?
No.
Manual labor.
Manual labor by the administrator.
Is that a Sharpie?
It's not that far. It's not that far off. I take all of the nominations out of the app and put them into an Excel spreadsheet. Save that. Then I take those nominations and I put them into the judge's packet, which is just a Word document that we have. And I have to manually go in and remove their names. In some cases, this last quarter, we actually even removed the gender pronouns, which I think is going a little overboard. We have a finite universe of people. We're 230 people. Everybody gets to know everybody, and the judges are bound to recognize who somebody is. So one of the things we have for them is if the context and the detail of the nomination is enough for you to figure out who the person actually is, that's okay. Our instructions to the judge are, don't share that information and judge the work, judge the nomination, keep personalities out of it. And it's happened in a couple of cases because there are some teams in ITS that are very, very small. And you know it's got to be one person or the other. And it works. It's miraculous. It works. Like I said, I was the biggest skeptic, right? The whole committee was like, this needs to be anonymous. I'm like, this is never going to work. You're crazy. It's not going to happen. But it actually did. So what happens is I put together the judge's packet. I give it to the judge wrangler, Terry Nebel. He's the assistant director of our service desk. Awesome guy. He is a really fantastic facilitator. He knows his Robert's Rules of Orders. He's very, very good at running a meeting. So I give it to Terry, and Terry reads it to make sure I didn't miss a name, and then, which I have done. I missed one reference to somebody once. That kind of sucked, but you know, I now know the value of triple checking a document to make sure there's no name in there. It goes to the judges, they judge it, then it comes back to me. The judges and the judge wrangler do not know who the nominees are. Then I go back in and restore the names, and I take that, it's kind of more detailed than you probably want about the process, but I'll take those entries, and then they go to senior leadership, and I give them a challenge form, and said, these are the winners that your judges have chosen this quarter. This is the winning entry. These are the people. If you have an objection, because there is an HR reason or a legal reason that cannot be discussed and they should not get this award, you can challenge. The other thing is if they're on a performance improvement program that is in direct conflict with the nature of the award, right? Because somebody could try to rig a nomination. So they have very, very narrow reasons that they're allowed to object. If they object, which has not happened the other one is if it's the wrong person getting credit for the work. If they object, it then goes to HR, and HR is the ultimate arbiter. It has yet to happen. In fact, the beautiful thing from my perspective is it's really difficult for me to get timely responses from everybody else on the senior staff. But in this case, they have 2 days to respond. They almost always respond within 2 to 3 hours. It's really fantastic. The anonymization thing is kind of laid out in the process, in the charter, and it's weird, but it really does work.
And as far as releasing it, I was wondering if you thought about open sourcing it or releasing the process.
That's actually in my notes, because that was the plan. When I say we want to release it, we're not talking about, please pay us. Yeah, and we were thinking about going down to Creative Commons open source route, because it would benefit everybody. And since Kathy's standing, I gather.
No, I'm just doing it.
Oh, you're just. How much time do we have?
We have about 15 minutes.
Okay.
One more
Okay.
question too.
Okay.
And when you talk about scaling it, have you thought about scaling down as well? Because it gets a little tricky when you get down to like, our department's only 30 people.
Yeah.
Your nomination, do you go down to like yearly nominations? Is that enough? Or
We're
because
gonna have to figure
quarterly
that out.
nominations, when you have 230 people,
Yeah.
when you're down to 30, it's like, well,
We
we're like a small team, right? So.
Meeting actually.
Yeah, and you could do that a couple different ways, right? Maybe it's not a quarterly thing. Maybe with so few IT staff, which in most cases is, what, 2 people? Just a couple people in each college. And then there's the whole health sciences complex, which has its own IT, a completely separate IT organization. So those are some of the challenges that we face in the future, and why we're going to continue to meet every Friday, because we've been working on this really hard for 2 years, but you're just scratching the surface of all the things we still have to do yet. I don't have an answer for you yet. I'd say stay tuned.
Before I get to you, let me do a follow-up. A couple things that we've done. In the first quarter, we don't have judges. There have been any winners, we can't do any judges. So we ask for volunteers. And you have to pick 3 judges to mimic our ideal of having 3 judges, every judge in the hearing. What we found with when somebody actually knew someone who had been nominated, they asked if they should recuse themselves, which is fantastic. That wasn't something we had talked about. It was just something that they, as judges, because they feel invested in the process. Another thing is there are certain members of our organization that are ineligible to be nominated. Okay, so senior leadership, Vicki. Nobody can nominate her. We can pat her on the back all day because she's the mother of the program. But she can't be nominated. Me as chair, I can't be nominated. And if we weren't in the positions we are, we couldn't be nominated for the work we did for the committee.
Right.
So we've got all these little rules. And I believe it can scale. I really do. I believe it can scale down. You just make the awards go out further and give it a shot.
Along those veins, our department's about 35 or 42, and I'm sitting here trying to think about how we could scale it down.
Yeah.
Even, and I want to get more information on the judging, or the judges, how you select the judges, where you pull the judges from. Are they outside of IT?
No, so the judges, so each quarter's winners, they judge the nominees the next quarter. The wrinkle is we don't always have 3 winners, right? Some quarters we have 2. So, and then the one quarter we had none. So in that particular case, we actually let those same 3 judges go at it again. Because they didn't really even, unfortunately for those judges, they didn't even really get to experience the whole process because they had 1 nomination to consider, right? But when we do have a vacancy, we have a process for selecting a volunteer from throughout ITS. We send out an announcement saying, hey, we have a vacancy, we're getting ready to start the judging process. Do you want to volunteer? We get names, people send in their names, we take all those names, we go down to our administrative assistant, and with witnesses, we do a random drawing, and that one person becomes, and then we send the announcement out to the staff, oh, Kathy's going to be the judge this quarter. So it's worked out, we managed to fill, but it's always within ITS, ideally, it's the previous winners.
Yes.
I'm not quite clear what you were trying to say when you said that you separate the Rocket Award from the. What do you mean?
Okay,
by that?
so when we started, we decided that what we were looking at were 2 distinct things. The one was an overarching framework for the award program, which we named AwardU. And the other one was our dedicated award program for just our unit. So the goal was to have this giant thing up here with the charter and the skeleton framework. And then you can take that and layer on exactly what you want to do with it. And it's your own award. So the English department could have a Twain award or something like that. And we use that same AwardU framework, but for their specific award.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the scalability, right? It's the AwardU framework, and the Rocket Awards are our implementation of AwardU. But ideally, if you were at health sciences, I don't know, it's Caduceus U. I don't know what you want to call it, right? You have some other, you give it some other name, and you tweak the structure, the processes, the rules to suit your new program. So, but what we were talking about was, in trying to make our program bulletproof, we kind of lost that, or we lost that perspective of the bigger framework, and so we have to go back and kind of revisit that. We kind of were using, when we were writing our talking points, using the terms Rocket Awards and AwardU interchangeably, but they're really not. The AwardU committee is what we are, but it's the Rocket Award. And so it's a distinction that kind of got lost along the way in some of our work going like in the English department maybe. You know, they weren't much better in a technology, and you'd have to figure out your own prizes, right? You'd have the same constraints that we have. You still have that $25 limit, but what makes sense for the English department doesn't make sense for IT. So the idea is that eventually we'll have a framework that you could apply anywhere across the university.
And implementation on this is way easier than the creation we had to do. So, you know, and the thing is, I've got in my documentation, I've got where we actually had AwardU rocket, and then sometime in that first 4 months of writing this, it just all became AwardU rocket, and then, so I lost the 2 branches, and that's partially my fault, because I was trying to keep up with it.
But you know, we're making this up as we go.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
you know,
so you don't have to.
Yeah, you don't have to. I mean, you can borrow what you like from us and then make it your own. But it really is. We've made it up as we go, and it's been amazing to see the response. And when you get people, we show the woman who holding up the trophy. Her name is Kathy Pepple, and Kathy is on the training team, and she's very quiet, and you just never expect her to do something like that. And it was just so completely out of character, and the joy on her face in that picture is why we chose that picture to end with, because that is why we do it. That's why we have committed so much time to it, and why we keep going back every week.
Sorry.
Because we love Kathy. But I mean, you look at her face, you know, and even behind her, the guy standing behind her clapping, that's Kip, it's Kristen over there. You know, these are people who are genuinely joyful for their peers. The other thing I'll tell you, since we have a little extra time, you know, we were talking about how the first Rocket Award winner, nobody knew who he was because he's so quiet. One of our winners for innovation, our first winner for innovation, was actually somebody everybody knew. And let's just say he's not the most popular guy in the office. He's prickly, let's say.
Good word.
And, you know, there was somebody who was like, I can't believe he won. And it's like, wait, he didn't win for being a role model. He didn't win for being a nice guy. He won for his work. And no one could dispute that. And that was, again, for us, validation of the program. If this was a popularity contest, that guy would not have won. His work is what won him the award. And I will tell you this, for people who care about employee morale, he is a new person today. After that happened, he started wearing his t-shirt in the office. He started smiling at people. He started saying hi to people. He actually engages in conversation now. I mean, that alone is worth all the work that we did. So you kind of have little surprises along the way that you won't expect.
Yeah. I'm friends with the guy. It's hard to like him. Any final questions as we wind down?
We're willing to stay if anybody wants to talk one-on-one.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.